Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Marty.
And I'm Brain Grow.
And we do this show every week to try and promote both aquaponic and cannabis production. This week, I had two different separate guests that were going to be on the show, and both of them had things come up over the afternoon. But we do have some, they're going to be on the show in upcoming weeks. Next week, we have Matt from Mountainside Glass is going to be with us. And then I have a couple of other cool guests that we're working on as well. In the mix that just weren't able to make it tonight. So, so we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We'll go over how to get started. Maybe if you joined us, midway through the series, maybe you haven't started. Hey, Johnny D. Thanks for joining us. And we also figured maybe this time, any of the viewers, if you guys have any grow questions or questions about aquaponic cannabis, please ask them in chat, and we will be happy to answer. So please fire away your questions. Anything you have about growing aquaponic cannabis, and we're going to talk a little bit about getting started. But fire your questions off, and we'll make this more of like a Q&A episode. So thanks everyone for joining us. Marty, why don't you tell us what you're up to this week? Or been up to this last week or so?
Oh, well, make sure I'm not muted here. Yeah, so for me, I'm still, like I've talked about a couple of times, just working on getting my house ready to be sold. Hopefully found another spot, and the owners are on vacation this week, which gives me kind of another week to get that sorted out, and hopefully we'll have that spot locked up, and I'll be able to reopen at least my medical grow. Couple of patients back on track, be able to grow outdoor, set up some outdoor aquaponic systems again, which would be kind of cool. And the couple that owns it now are really friendly, so it was really cool to get to hang out with them for a little while. And so yeah, prepping this house to get sold. Somebody's looking at it next week already, so already somebody interested in it. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, I don't expect it to be the first person that walks through the door, but sometimes that does happen. I know next door, the house right here next door sold in 3 days. So I don't know if we'll break any kinds of records like that, but hopefully it can sell within the next couple of weeks, so I can still be able to get into this other properly zoned property. And bought a car that we can all fit in, so that was kind of cool. Again, met another cancer patient who's using cannabis. The guy was selling his rig because his wife had bone cancer and needed to pay medical bills. So I felt a little bad about having to buy the guy. It's like his favorite rig, and he has to sell it because this unfortunate circumstance. But I went ahead and just paid him the asking price. I couldn't bring myself to lowball him. I just couldn't do it. So I paid him full price for it. It was a fair price though, so it wasn't too bad. And so just kind of doing normal everyday shit right now. I only have a few plants in the garage, so I don't have any grow responsibilities. But yeah, it was kind of cool to meet another cancer patient, like I was saying, that was using cannabis, during their treatment. And I guess in their lack of treatment right now, she was having trouble getting service from the hospital, and was pretty much entirely on cannabis oil at the moment. So it was kind of cool to get to talk with her a little bit about that. And again, still feels unfortunate to not be able to have the surplus I normally have to be able to help out. I would have loved to be able to just hand him a nice bag full to help him out, but I just don't have that kind of surplus now that I can't grow outdoor. And so that's just one of those unfortunate realities of Jackson County right now. But hopefully we'll get things back on track, get the new property, get the new plants in, and maybe even get something this year. But just kind of keeping things up in the air. Got a few things floating around, and we'll see what lands first, I guess, for the most part. But other than that, making some ferments. We made a dandelion and like buttercup ferment, like a flower power ferment. I had the kids help me with that. We had I have, like I said, I think I said in the show before, we have like a pear that grows. It's like either a sour pear or sour plum. I think it's a plum. and they taste terrible even when they're ripe. But, so they're almost like a sour cherry, but more of a plum. And so we made a ferment out of those, and so I'll store up some plant food that I use to feed the aquaponics systems, and then pretty soon we'll get blackberries. Will be ripe enough to harvest, and I usually do a couple of ferments with those as well, just because they're everywhere. It's so easy to find them, and you know, they're a great source of fruiting nutrients. I usually take my dad's four-wheeler. It's got a bucket on the front, so I just put it up at an angle like that and just drive right into the blackberries and just have whatever falls into the bucket and come back out with a whole bucket full, and then ferment those out in 5-gallon buckets. So here in about maybe about 3 weeks or so will be time to start doing that. And they're just starting to get a few black ones. I like them to be almost spent, like almost rotting off, so they'll just fall off nice and easy.
I've got a whole bunch of blackberries myself out in the greenhouse. Since it's been closed, it's been overtaken by blackberries. So it's not a total loss.
Those things are just gathering plant food for you, hanging it out there.
Yeah. I'll have to listen to the beginning of the show. See, I had a technical difficulty all of a sudden pop up at the last minute. Had to change.
Well, we just started. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so nice. So what was the topic then, if you don't mind me asking, so I can...
we're just talking about what I had going on lately. Not really too much. Just kind of, I was talking about the ferments I was making, which is the blackberry and the sour plum or whatever it's called.
That's something.
So how are you doing your ferments? Are you doing like a Korean natural farming style, or how are you doing that?
I do mine with an EM1 bokashi, so it's a little bit like Korean natural, but usually they use brown sugar alone. So this would be this would be more of a extract, I guess, what they would call it, instead of a juice, right? So you have FPJ and FPE, and I'm not an expert on it, but I believe the extract is when you use the added microbes in addition to some sort of carb source in order to break down the fruit. So in this case, I'm using EM1 Bokashi brand, and I usually do about a third of a 5-gallon bucket full of like smashed plums, I guess it is for this one. So about a third material, then I fill it up with water till it's about 3/4 of the way full, and then you know, cover it but not seal it, so it still has some air to breathe. And that's how I do mine. I have some pictures I can throw up in the Facebook group, so you guys can check that out too.
Cool. Yeah, I'm starting to follow you and Brain Grow on the Brain Grow and his fermenting. It's pretty interesting. I'm going to start getting into a lot of that because I've got so much available here. You know, I'm kind of like you guys. We all live in an excellent place to get any kind of or grow any kind of produce you pretty much want to grow, and so I'm real interested in that. You know, in fact, I can see, you know, when you mentioned fermenting, you're using, like Brain Grow's using it for doing it to supplement his plants and provide minerals. But I'd like to make some wine and stuff like that too, out of like blackberries, or like didn't you say you got elderberry trees, right?
I have an elderberry bush that's in my outdoor aquaponics system right now. I just put it in this year because I couldn't put cannabis in, so I decided to put in some other, you know, fruiting plants. Since it was already in place, figured why not. So one of the ones I put in was an elderberry bush for sure. And
yeah, I tried to start some of those seeds. It didn't work out too well for me a few years ago, but I'm still waiting on pictures of your elderberry bush and your aquaponics set up in the back.
I posted them in the cannabis growers group.
Did you? Okay, all right.
Are you in that on Facebook?
I have to go. I just never have time to go over there. I see, I see Dummy posting it quite often, so I want to, but I'm always busy doing something when I see it.
Well, I'll throw some more up also, and then actually, I have a video that I need to upload. My import is messed up. Usually, I just import my videos from Google Photos, but for whatever reason, it won't go through. Like in the last week, I haven't been able to do any of them like that. So I have to download them and upload them again, which is no big deal. But
yeah.
So Brain, if you check out in the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers group, you can see the bucket I just posted a picture of, the ferment I do on that. So kind of the same way that you would do a brown sugar cap for a ferment. I do the same thing with Bokashi brand. I just cover that. At first I mix it in and then I cover the whole top with Bokashi brand. And then I usually let it sit for usually about a week, maybe a week and a half or so. It kind of depends on how it develops. This one's been sitting for about 48 hours, I guess now. So if anybody's looking, you can go to
cool.
Facebook, Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Group, and check that out.
Hey, it's Ganja Guy.
So how long do you usually let that ferment?
I usually let that go about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. I usually go on the pH. I like to see the pH drop down to, under 4, or at least right around 4.
Have any of you guys used moringa at all in any of your ferments?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I've had
I've never used it before.
I've had some pretty cool results with doing powdered moringa leaf, and with that provides quite a wide range of minerals and proteins.
That's what I was going to ask. So with the wide range, it'd be more than just something to casually list off. But that's what I was going to ask. So you answered that question. I was going to ask Marty too. What's the beneficial minerals out of the blackberries?
Well, out of pretty much any fruit, you're going to get a relatively large amount of potassium and usually at least some phosphorus, and that's usually what we're after in aquaponics. So that's the reason why I primarily go after fruit for my ferments, and then blackberries are just so abundant that you can go out and get them for free, and it's easy. It's kind of like horsetail fern.
Yeah, you can get them for free. You can
it grows everywhere.
You can't stop them. For those of you that don't know, that are new to aquaponics, since I'm a newbie aquaponics on this panel, I'd like to remind you that the reason Marty mentioned that it's high, high in phosphorus and potassium, and that's really what they're looking for, is because the fish provide the nitrogen and most of the iron and all that they need. And so then you're searching to add to balance it with potassium and phosphorus from other ways. And these gentlemen like to do ferments, which I find intriguing, and it seems like it'd be a real gentle, natural way to really add it and have the plants love it too.
I had really good luck with it, both fermenting and or even feeding the worms, because that's what I do with I'll even have some solids left over after my ferment is done, and the worms go nuts over them. So basically, I strain everything out and add the liquid to the aquaponic system, or I dilute it into a tea for to spray in the backyard or something like that on the raised bed.
Was that blackberries, was it?
What was that?
Was that blackberries or blueberries? I didn't hear.
Blackberries.
Would you be able to just feed it to the fish and have the phosphorus and potassium processed through them?
That's a better question for Steve. I don't know.
That's a good question.
Well, as far as with the Korean natural farming method, you can definitely give. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're fermenting. Obviously, you want to stay away from citrus fruits. But I have when I did the apricot ferment I've done recently, they absolutely love the fermented fruit scraps left over.
I could definitely see that.
The best fruit skins, if you can find them, if you happen to have them, you're going to have to be in the southern half of the U.S. to get them. But if you can find soursop, or whatever the heck they call soursop in the U.S., the skins from that and the leaves from that, it's a tree. It'll tolerate down to, I think, 50. Hold on, let me look up what the U.S. name for that is. Hold on.
Yeah,
but the Jamaicans, they make a ferment with that in 55-gallon drums, and then they use cow or goat's milk along with the skins from the soursops and the leaves from soursop, and then there's a couple of other herbs there that you use. But also sometimes they'll throw nuni in there as well. Nuni is a really, if you've been in the tropics, nuni is a very common tropical medicinal tree. The fruit is very bitter and kind of hard to take, but they make a wine into it and they sweeten it, and it's much better when it's in a wine.
That sounds like what is it that they have around here? Now I'm not going to be able to remember the damn name of it. It's a grape they make wine out of down here in the South. and and you can't eat the grape. It's nasty. I'm sorry. It'll come to me during the show sometime. It's a local thing, but it sounds like that's similar to what you're talking about. It's kind of hard. Is it kind of hard, Steve?
No, sour sops they're big. They're
Yeah. Like,
it's like a size of like a large yam or something, maybe a little bit wider but chubbier, and they're I don't know, very very good. The Latin name is Anoa maracata, and it's really good. I'm trying to find the U.S. name for it here.
I was thinking of muscadine. It just came to me.
Wait, so you know the Latin name, but not the American name?
Well, he looked it up and it gave him the Latin, like a dictionary.
Well, I mean, like Mucuna paraensis beans, I know the Latin name from that. It's just we did a lot of fish stuff with tropical fish species, and a lot of them they don't have a normal name, so you just get used to Latin names.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
It has anti-cancerous properties and all kinds of stuff, but it has a couple of interesting proteins that when you use it in a ferment transfer well. It's also high in vitamin C, vitamin B, and vitamin B2. So it helps a lot.
I've also just started mixing bokashi brand in with my fish food, and they seem to really, they'll, like the koi, for instance, and the catfish, they'll eat just about anything like that I've thrown in there. Like,
oh yeah, catfish. Those guys just want food, whatever it is.
Yeah, so I don't, I think they would definitely eat it for sure. And then I don't know about like if there's another benefit to feeding it to the worms, but I can tell you they love it, and it seems like they reproduce a lot faster. The worms do. When I feed them the fermented solids, they'll just be like within a couple of days, it'll just have like an exploded population of tiny red worms. So it's always been a good way to boost the worm bin, and then all the liquid goes into the aquaponic systems.
Yeah, and putting your raw fish waste into your worm bins is really good as well. I know they do that at Ouroboros, where they take the fish waste, then it goes into vermicompost, and then they break it down into, extremely good worm casings, because it's like, it's worm casings made from fish casings, basically. So.
Right. So that's where like all of my solids out of my filter just gets slopped on top of my worm bin, and.
Yep.
Oh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Using all of it.
Yeah, I think there's no reason not to. It's kind of the same thing as Ouroboros is doing, right? I mean, they pretty much empty their sludge out and kind of kick it out, right?
The thick stuff they take and they put it in that, and then the second batch they take and put it into the brewers.
Right, they have like a mineralizing tanks or something.
Yep, and I actually have a video on it if you're curious on it on my YouTube over at Ponics, in the how-to section, I think it is.
Yeah, I think
it's in the Ouroboros section.
I'm gonna watch
that.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You should check it out.
Yeah, I've actually started doing that with mine as well, taking it out and just throwing an air stone in a bucket and adding some of my Korean natural farming ingredients to it and letting that ferment for 24 to 36 hours, and then just add it straight to strain it out, of course, and then add it straight into the system.
Right. And then I use a lot of I use some filter paper. Some places have in my system, I have little places where I just use like landscaping paper as a filter, and it cakes up on there, and then I take those out and use them in my sips. So it'll be the separator paper in between. They just get caked in waste. So I use
nice
separator and then just lay it down, and it makes for, I don't feed my sips any nitrogen really, just because you're getting, so much of it from the system already that,
right.
I pretty much treat them the same way I dose an aquaponic system, just because you already get so much more from the system already.
Do you want to explain to people exactly like your process, or maybe you can go over your process and then I can mention mine and see if we have any differences or anything as far as the ferments. A lot of people out here, maybe this is new to them or haven't heard of this before. You want to maybe give people like a quick how-to?
Sure. So I do a couple of things. So for my own rotation, what I have is in my kitchen, I have a bokashi bucket. which for that is basically just some EM1 Bokashi brand. I add water to mine. Not everybody does. Like a traditional Bokashi bucket doesn't have water in it. If you just look up Bokashi bucket, they'll just have you put all your food waste in there and add the Bokashi brand to help break it down. But I like to add mine. Sorry, go ahead, Roger.
Is that Bukashi?
That's Bokashi. Bokashi.
All right, so Bokashi. All right, thank you. Just so people can look it up. All right, sorry.
Mm-hmm. So, for instance, I ordered Bokashi brand from Terragenics, which is an EM1 Bokashi brand, and it was, I think, on sale 2 for 1 was one of the reasons that I bought it. And then also I've had great results with it, so I would definitely do it again. But it's similar to Labs. I mean, for the most part, their Bokashi brand is a rice brand. It's been inoculated with Labs, basically. And it's also got some brown sugar, or maybe it's molasses powder. I can't remember, something like that. So basically you hydrate it and it's just like making activated Labs. So it's really cool. So it's EM1 Bokashi brand. That's on Terragenics website. You can check that out. But basically any Bokashi brand, you can make it yourself. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. But that's where I start, is putting in. And I only do, for myself, I only do fruit and vegetable waste. So I don't do any meat. I don't do any manure of any kind. So I don't, like, we have some duck manure out back that, I'm not throwing any of that stuff in there or anything like that. It's basically just fruit and vegetables in the Bokashi brand, and usually about 3/4 of the way full of water. So it's basically like a really sloppy kitchen ferment, I guess. And I leave it in there until it builds up, and then I take that out to the worm bin, and it gets washed essentially into the worm bin, and they eat it there. So that's kind of like my main, I guess, sort of processing for like composting stuff. For fermenting, if I have things like the flower power ferment that I do, or the pears that we talked about, or the blackberries, I mentioned a little bit before, there's 2 different kinds. And this is roughly speaking. You have an FPJ, which is fermented plant juice, and you have an FPE, which is fermented plant extract. So fermented plant juice would be using just brown sugar. So usually you do something like 1/3 weight of solid material. Usually do water again, just like you do in the other one. And then you do equal weights of brown sugar. So you want 1/3 brown sugar, 1/3 solid material, 1/3 water. You can add extra water if you really want to, but it just comes out more diluted. So kind of depends on where you want to go from there. So then usually you take brown sugar and you make a cap over the top of it. So you fill it up enough to kind of make a solid brown sugar cap to where you can't see any liquid. And then you let that sit for about 2 weeks. Juice usually takes a little bit longer in my experience. And again, you're looking at the pH, and you want to see it dropping down over time, so that you know that the same kind of activity in our aquaponic system that drives down your pH, you should see happening in there as microbes consume the sugar and all that. And then it should go dormant. If you leave it long enough, you'll see the microbial activity stop, and then you can store it ready to go for quite a while. There are lots of different ways for doing that. So that's just a really rough overview. You have people that get really Nazi about it. There's a Facebook group actually called Korean Natural Farmers, if you want to check it out. But they are really strict in the way that they do stuff. Myself and other people have already been kicked out of it because we don't do stuff exactly like they do. But they do have a lot of great information, and as long as that's something you're okay with, it's a great place to just be a fly on the wall. But if you speak up, you may get kicked, just so you know. Or if you do anything different, they don't like that. They're pretty. It's the Korean Natural Farmers Group. Have you checked that out on Facebook?
The Korean Natural Farmers Group?
Yeah, it can.
PFA can be that way sometimes.
No, not PFA. This is like even worse than PFA. Like, there's people in PFA, they complain about, like, there are some of the worst people in PFA that are, elitist and all that other stuff. But like literally there was a lady there. She's in PFA now. That's how I know about this because, like I said, I got kicked out before over how I do my ferments. Apparently, it's not perfect or something. So and so kind of the same thing happened to her. Was that she had posted a question, something about fermenting. I can't remember what it was now, but it seemed like a reasonable question. Like she was literally just curious about changing up a process, and they just like completely railed her. It was disturbing, some of the language that was used. I mean, I've seen some pretty nasty Twitter wars, but damn.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, it was pretty ugly. And they ended up kicking her out over some just questions. So I don't want to give them too much of a bad name or talk too much shit about them. But like I said, if you're really interested in the differences or the real traditional way of doing Korean natural farming, then you can go talk to them because they know all about the very traditional way of doing it. It's sacred.
Well, what does Brain Grow think of all this? Because that's what he does. So do you have something to say about all that? I was just curious.
Well, I mean, as far as the Korean natural farming and the way I do my extracts, I've never added water to any of them. You just basically you add like 1 part brown sugar to 2 parts plant material or fruits or whatever you're doing your extract with is how I've usually done mine. But I mean, there's a lot of different types of things you can make with Korean natural farming.
Okay.
Style,
I was kind of
like you
personally
can
waiting
do
for
like
Brain
there's
to jump in and say that he was a moderator on that forum and just go off on Marty.
Damn it! You son of a bitch!
No, well, I mean, really, the only thing is there for me to talk about is that I just do my ferments slightly different. I've actually the way I've done mine is the Korean natural farming method. You usually go like 2 parts, like I said, 2 parts of whatever you're going to ferment to 1 part of brown sugar, and just let it go for about 7 days, depending on where you're at. Depending on what the temperature is normally like. The warmer it is, the faster it'll ferment. And like Marty said, you can see the microbial activity slow down. You'll stop seeing like bubbles rising to the surface and stuff like that. But I mean, there's other stuff you can do. There's like the calcium phosphate. That's one of my favorite things to do. You just take some eggshells, roast them up, and then let that sit. And by volume, you go like 1 part eggshells to 3 parts vinegar. And that's one thing I was going to try and start making my own of as well as vinegar. Just talking about fermenting in general, because you often have the fruit scraps that you have a variety of things that you can actually choose to do with them. And one thing that I've been interested in doing, and I haven't actually done it yet, but I've been wanting to try and make my own vinegar. That way I can do like like whatever I've fermented. I can use that vinegar to do my calcium phosphate extracts. So it'll have a little bit of extra benefit. I think whatever's recommended to do it is whatever kind of vinegar you can find that's been naturally made. You don't want to use distilled vinegar for something like that.
So Larry asks, do these ferments chelate or break the nutrients down into a usable form? So that's a cool question.
Yes.
It entirely depends on what you're doing. Now, when you're talking about really pure lactobacillus ferments, for example, so well, let this, I guess.
If I get to that one, so we talked about juice, and
Yeah.
I guess extract would be the next thing, and I guess Calphos in KNF might be considered an extract. I'm not, because I mean, you are kind of doing it, but anyway. So I guess the point is when you use something like the EM1 Bokashi brand or an added microbial, it's usually considered an extract. At least is kind of the basic way that I explain it to people. Is when instead of using brown sugar, you're adding some other type of microbe that's going to break it down even faster. Is that a good rough way of explaining it? Because there's really, again, so many different ways that
Can you
people do it and
clarify?
define it.
I think the best way to
Well,
sure.
yeah,
So
as far as like doing a extract, the way that you kind of described it with using a bokashi brand, like one thing that you can kind of do, which is why I like Korean natural farming, is you can kind of customize whatever microbes you're trying to use or capture or whatever. You know, lactobacillus is mostly used in all of it. You know, you're using the natural microorganisms that naturally occur on the surface of whatever you're trying to ferment. So obviously you don't want to be trying to use something like fruit that you go get from your just regular old grocery store. At the very least, you want to make sure that you're getting it organic. And in best case scenario, you want to use fresh fruit right off the tree, you know, with something that you can verify has had no pesticides or anything like that sprayed on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't get blackberries from like alongside the road or like.
Yeah, I actually did an extract with the black mulberries. I think I was talking to Steve and Roger about this. I'm not sure if you were there or not, but just when I open the jar and smell it, it just smells like wine. It's just like a real deep, rich red, and just smells like wine whenever I smell it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is actually. I mean, it's really.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure. And for the most, like basically, um, you know, it's left normally when you feed it to your plants before it gets to that sort of sweet point, unless you've added a bunch of sugar to it. I guess that might be the case. But if you're really fermenting it out a long time till it gets a high alcohol on content, then that's not going to be so great for plants, right? But as long as you're in that, when you're just talking about making plant food, as long as you feed it before it gets to that alcohol state, then that's when it's at its most beneficial, is kind of the way that I've been explained to it. Because actually my uncle made blackberry wine a long time ago. He's made it for years and years and years, made blackberry wine. And so I actually kind of hit him up when I started doing some fermenting stuff, because he'd done it for human consumption as opposed to plant consumption. So it's kind of a resource to do that. But you can, you are essentially making wine, and you can even, do it with the probiotic aspect of it as well, and still have it be safe for human consumption. It's sort of like a wine crossed with kombucha.
Yeah, and just like you mentioned, you can add sugar to the finished product at a 1-to-1 ratio, and that'll stabilize your extract that you just made, and basically it'll stop fermenting or going further past the stage you want it to be at.
Right, and that will decrease your microbial life. So that's another way you can kind of control what you're doing in your grow too, is if you want the boost of microbes, you want to feed it as opposed to adding the brown sugar to it for storage. So it's a nice way to be able to store stuff for a long time too, or kind of decide what you want to do with it. Obviously, you can't store something that has a lot of microbial life, because if you try to seal it up in any way, it's going to build up pressure and want to explode, and so on and so forth, or turn to alcohol, kind of like what we talked about, which is great if you want to drink it, but not so great if you want to feed it to plants.
So can I ask something real quick?
No, Roger, no.
Brain, when you said adding the sugar, that was to slow it down, to keep it from turning into alcohol. Isn't that what that was for?
So it's a way of shelf stabilizing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm talking about shelf stabilization. You're still gonna have a nice diverse microbial population, but I mean, I guess in talking about sugar, I mean, I guess I could have been more specific. I'm talking about molasses. You add molasses at 1-to-1 by volume, and it just stabilizes it.
Yeah, I wanted to, because you said you didn't want it to go to once it got to the alcohol, like a mash, like if you were making moonshine, you do the same thing and you let it turn into a mash, and you can drink it and get drunk. So that means that alcohol content at that point. So when Marty said you don't want it to go that far, and then you mentioned the sugar, I was seeing that as kind of a stopgap kind of situation where you could extend the time you could store it without it getting to alcohol.
Well, the other thing you can do too is store it in the refrigerator. If you store it in the refrigerator, it'll last a little longer. But like he was saying, the best way to do it to stabilize it long term is to cut it about 50-50 or 60-40 50%, 50%, sugar to labs, or a 60% labs to 40%, molasses or sugar, brown sugar, just to stabilize it.
For all the newbies out here in the world, what does you mean every time you guys keep mentioning the labs? Some people out here have no idea what labs means.
Yeah, so I wanted to
Yeah,
explain that before I fully answered that question. Do you want to go on to it, Brian, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
They
Man,
grind
go
up
ahead.
Labrador Retriever puppies and feed them to the fish.
Yep. Basically, we go down to our local animal shelter.
It's
We
pure
pick
red
out
Dalmatians
all-
only. What are you guys talking about? Go pure and
Oh,
go home.
That's why yours comes out a little whiter, right? Because you got all the Dalmatians.
That's right.
Got that black and white to help.
Again,
Keep it
remember,
colored.
all PETA complaints go to Steve.
So we get the liquid lab rats, and no. Labs is okay. So I guess here's a really good intro guide to doing labs. So go to your local Home Depot, buy a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. And then you're going to take that and you're going to get some rice wash. So you're going to get rice. Once you have your bucket, take it home, clean it out, make sure it's clean. Then you're going to get some rice you're going to make for yourself, or you're just going to buy it for the sake of making this, whatever you're going to do. Try to cook it for somebody or give it away to somebody that needs food if you're going to do that. Or feed birds, whatever. Wash your rice, and you're going to end up with this rice wash, which is super starchy. And that is a really, really good source for the lactobacillus to feed on. You can leave it open air in a bowl for a couple hours. It'll collect, hopefully it'll collect a couple of the microbes to get your lab culture started. Never really seems to be a problem. I've done this Jamaica, Colorado, California, Pennsylvania, Oregon, all over it. It's just naturally occurring. So after you've left it out for a couple hours, take that, put it in your bucket. And then you're going to take molasses. You're going to need about how many gallons of rice water do you guys use when you do it? I usually use about 2 or 3.
I've never done it on a large scale. I'll just throw like an 8-ounce jar of the rice wash and let it sit out for a few days, and then just add that to about a gallon of milk or gallon and a half, give or take.
Okay. 1 second, we gotta do some moderation here. There we go. That's better. We had some random troll on the thing that was being a dumbass. Yeah. So where were we? Okay, so you're gonna get about 2 or 3 gallons of rice wash. So might take you a week to gather up enough, and then you're gonna get a gallon of milk, and you're gonna pour a gallon of milk in there. Ideally, you want about 1-to-1 ratio. So actually you'd be about 2 gallons of milk and 2 gallons of the rice wash. I just have lines on my bucket that I put with Sharpie, and I just fill them up to each one, and makes it simple. I highly suggest doing that at home, so especially if you're trying to repeat your dosing.
Good idea.
And then you're going to take, so you have your rice wash, your milk, and then you have your molasses. So you're going to put 2 to 3 pounds of powdered molasses into the bucket. You can buy that dirt cheap. You can get a big, huge bag, like a 5 or 10 pound bag of molasses at the garden center for I think it's like $11 or something. It's not expensive at all. So you put that all in there and you stir it up real good. And then you can take moringa leaf, you can take spirulina, you could take what's the kelp stuff called? The generic name for it? Maxi crop. Any of your kelp-based stuff, and if you use any of those, or even like Marty suggests using dandelions and things like that, what it'll do is it'll take and break down the chlorophyll and break off the phytocyanin and some of the other, as well as some of the other compounds, and break them down that the plant needs, different proteins. Just one example. breaks them down and makes them isolated and makes them stabilized in with this lactobacillus. And the bacillus immediately loves to work with the plant root system and interact with that rhizosphere. So what happens is you take all of these proteins, that the plant proteins and plant essential proteins, with that carrier, with the lactobacillus, it immediately gets delivered to that root zone, and the plants happily uptake them and go, hey, I don't have to make this complex molecule now. I can just attach on the simple ones. Okay, cool. I have chlorophyll A, I have chlorophyll B, I have, phytochrome, I have whatever compound that it needs that you're able to get those base building block proteins from. So that it just makes it much easier for the plant to work. You get incredible growth. So you got all those things in your bucket that we talked about. You're going to stir it all up. Then you're going to put the lid on that, and you're going to seal it up real tight. And you're going to put it in a cool place, maybe like in your basement or on the first floor, on like a cooler area underneath a desk. And you're going to not touch it for 2 weeks. And then once those 2 weeks goes by, take it outside, crack it open, and you'll have your ferment. Now, you're going to have something that resembles cheese on top. Take that, put it on your vegetable garden, put it on your fruit trees, put it on your lawn. If you've got a patch of lawn that needs to be revived, if there's a dog that went to the bathroom in an area too many times, it'll help re-stabilize that soil and make it much more positive for plants.
Your chickens or ducks or your dog, yep. You can grind it up, feed it to your fish.
Oh yeah, yep. And fish love it. You can feed it to your animals, feed it to your livestock. It's great for cows and horses. They've been using it since the 16 or 1700s for that.
You can also make your own cheese out of it if you're interested in doing that.
And there's a couple. I mean, you can also use. I've heard people of using potatoes. They kind of mash potatoes or boil potatoes and make like a liquid potato mash, and then use that in place of the rice wash. So you can experiment with other starches and things like that as well. You don't have to, stick with that. Just. I
see Roger over there right now. He's like, I go full on vodka if I'm getting potatoes.
So you can do vodka dosing too. So that's it.
You could make vodka.
Yeah. And well, so before we totally switch gears on that, experiment with the ferments. Maybe putting some strawberry leaves or some raspberry leaves or even some berries in there into that lactobacillus ferment, or some of the soursop skins or peach skins or anything that's non-citrus and not a nightshade. You don't want to put tomatoes in there or peppers would not be good. So, don't put anything, or potatoes, don't put those in there. But anything else is fine. Fruiting crop-wise, you could put zucchini and cucumber and beans and stuff like that. That'd be just fine to use for a ferment, or any of your leafy greens. If you got some frumpier leaves or stuff like that, as long as they're clean and not, you don't want to introduce another fungal thing in there. But it works really, really well for breaking down those proteins that the plants use, especially when you have a source like that.
So you can use potatoes in place of the rice wash, but you can't use potatoes in the rice wash. Is that what you just said?
You could use them both together. Yeah, you can experiment. You could use quinoa wash. I mean, millet wash would work just fine.
What about beans?
Sure.
One thing I've seen done with the potatoes is they'll just make a baked potato and throw it in a what's it called, a paint strainer, like a paint strainer bag, and just take that in their bucket of water and just squeeze the shit out of it till it starts releasing all the starches, and that'll cause the water to get real milky.
Yep, I've seen that too.
Yeah, cool. So beans.
Yep.
Yeah, you could wash beans too. Basically, you're just looking to wash off microbes into the water is all that you're really looking for, and different ones grow on different stuff. So you might get a few different strains, but for the most part, you're going to get what you need anyway. And when you're doing even the rice wash, you're probably getting a lot, but what you're counting on is the labs, the lactobacillus themselves, is to outcompete everything else if you give it that food source. So, for the most part, as long as you are just rinsing something, whether it's beans or rice or any of those things, and then adding in the milk the bacillus is gonna take over because of the food source that's present. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And now, yeah, actually, the answer to my original question was labs is lactobacillus. It's short for lactobacillus. And this is how you create this is how you create your fermenting in doing it. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. See, that's why I wanted to ask those questions, because a lot of us have not used this, because unless you're been into aquaponics or some kind of other organic growing in a very, I would say, a higher level than most people talk. When they talk organic growing, they're not doing this. You know, they have no clue. You know, so that's what I'm loving about it. So that's why I pick y'all's brains, because we're really spreading the information out here now. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and just to break it down a little more simply, like, I don't think you quite need the volumes that Steve was talking about. Like, I know with the lactobacillus, you'll find like countless videos out there that just say all you need is like 1 to 10 on rice wash to your milk, and then just ferment that. And like he explained, you know, you'll have that cheese layer forming after, you know, after about a week. Really is all it's ever taken me, like 5 days to be honest, and everything will be real solidified on top, and I can strain that out.
And
But that's just like the bottom line, easiest way to do it.
And you could also, if you strain off the top and you take a turkey baster and you just take the pure liquid from the middle, you can store that in a mason's jar and keep it like a mother culture, the same way you would for vinegar or kombucha or something like that, and save it permanently so that you can reuse those microbes. And you can even add a little bit of recharge. I mean, you can add all different kinds of stuff. Like it's kind of like an open door, and you can go now experiment with all these, figure out what works for you. Do use a little bit of your own research, check out some of the other stuff that people are doing, and feel free to use all different kinds of stuff. Feather meal is another good one that tends to break down pretty well in the lactobacillus one. So there's a little rock phosphate works really well on it. A little dolomite sometimes works really well on it.
Rock phosphate.
Yep. Yeah. So you can work with all different kinds of stuff to spice it up. Same thing with your compost teas, but particularly with the labs, you get all kinds of cool results when you start experimenting.
Yeah, or langbronite is another one that I end up throwing in a lot. For when I have plants that need independent dosing. So that's another one that you can throw in there too. But it is I think of it a lot like like the grazing cows, I guess, because it's very easy for people to visualize a cow out in the field eating something and then, shitting out nutrients. And really it's the same thing for a microbe. There's just billions of them and they're super small. And so generally I can, people can kind of make that correlation. And so we're going to take a bunch of them, breed them in a bucket. And then that's what we do with the, especially like the fermented plant juice, is that we want it to stabilize with readily available nutrients. So what's already been processed can be stabilized. And when we say stabilized, that means that we don't want the microbial life to continually expand and create pressure in its sealed environment. And so they've reached some sort of balance with their environment, I guess. And then you can dilute them store them for longer, or all those different things that we talked about.
You can go to the brew store actually and get a 5-gallon bucket lid that has a nipple on top and a little glass fixture. You put water in there and it'll let gas out, but it won't allow air to get back in.
Right, an airlock. Yeah.
A little airlock. You can also use a little a little rubber glove. You can use a rubber glove and just poke a hole in the middle finger, and it'll just stay puffed up. And that's actually a really good indicator to see whenever your fermentation is done, because the glove will just go limp, and there's your indication that your fermentation is done.
That's really cool. I hadn't heard of that. We always just stuck to a week and a half or 2 weeks, 10 days usually, 10 to 14 days.
Yeah, you can do a balloon.
Which, I mean, using the airlock method like you're talking about, I mean, it's the same thing. All you're looking for is bubbles. Once the bubbles stop going, then you're done,
Right. I've seen people use, and I've used myself, like if you get the water balloons that are really small, then you can put those over the top of it as well, just like a little tube off the top, and it'll, like, you can tell when it like inflates the balloon to a certain size, then it's given off so much air in the exchange that it'll inflate the bubble. or the balloon a little bit, and so then you get an indication of it there. There's cheap airlocks that you can get, I think, on Amazon. I think I ordered mine for like $5 for 2 of them or something like that.
Just don't you buy a cheap.
$5.
Just don't
They're
buy a
little
cheap
glass
airlock
ones.
for your spaceship.
Yeah, they're really easy, and they just pop through the top of those lids you was talking about. And
I can think of a million ways to do that. Yeah.
so the other thing that I do is I had an old pet food container, which is the lid on those is kind of like an airlock, in that the way it seals, for the most part, it has the pressure going out, and it seals off relatively well, so you don't get a lot of contaminants coming in. So I do a ferment inside of an old pet food container, and that works pretty good as well. So if you got one of those laying around, it'll still let it breathe, but for the most part, leave it uncontaminated, which is really what you want to do, is make sure that it's not getting other bacteria in from the outside, like mold spores or different things like that, that would also thrive on the food source and compete with the lactobacillus. And sometimes you can see that, like, if you do enough ferments, you'll probably eventually have one of them that doesn't go so well, or maybe you leave one sitting out or something like that. But you can see where different types of mold will start growing, whether it's colored. Like some stuff I would say is considered okay. Like some people consider green is not so bad, but for the most part, I like to stick with white. But if you start seeing like black or blue, dark colors, then that's an obvious just throw it out, start over kind of situation. So those are kind of maybe the things to watch for in your ferments as well. But I think for the most part, people will find that they're just relatively easy to do. You're just throwing shit in a bucket and waiting. And, it's really not rocket science. It sounds way more intimidating than it actually is. Like, we could talk about it for 2 hours here. In reality, we could go out in the same amount of time and have like 20 buckets set up, and it's just that easy to do, especially if you have a way to collect something locally. Like, we talked about the Korean natural farming. One of the guys I watched videos on is Chris Trump on YouTube. Collects banana flowers in Hawaii just because they're readily available. That's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, he makes it real simple.
Yeah, just little stuff like that. And I think he's great too, because he takes the banana flowers, which are already spent, and they're not really doing anything. Their purpose is going to be to fall back on the ground and create and add nutrients back into the soil. So he's really just taking advantage of that, and doesn't hurt the bananas at all. They're all flowered out and everything's done. So he's got a great video on making like commercial scale FPJ out of banana flowers, which is really cool. You guys should definitely check that out if you're interested in doing ferments. That's Chris Trump on YouTube. And it's a large scale grow in Hawaii where they grow a number of different things there. And he's really big into the Korean natural farming, and is relatively active on Facebook and some of the groups as well. And is overall just makes really good videos, in my opinion. Brain, have you checked out his stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I was actually fixing to mention the Oriental Herbal Nutrient video. Like, if you go and you research Korean natural farming in general, you'll see all of the different things that you can make out of all kinds of different shit. You know what I'm saying? And the good thing about it is you can kind of craft it to your own style or whatever you have available to you. But as far as the Oriental Herbal Nutrient, like, you'll find videos of everything else, but he has really the best video that explains the Oriental Herbal Nutrient. And you can even get creative with that depending on what's in your area or what you have available to you. And one thing that I was actually wanting to try was making like a cannabis-based Oriental Herbal Nutrient to add to the lineup, taking maybe like some dried up leaves and doing the fermentation that way, or maybe even fresh leaves, or maybe even buds, to get more creative and do a flowering based fermented flower juice, I guess you would call it, kind of along the same lines as you would make a fermented fruit juice. I was wanting to get creative with that, and that's a good thing about Korean natural farming that I really love.
Yeah, and I would definitely do that. And I compost a lot of my stuff too. Another great place that I think is a great place to put a bokashi bucket, or any sort of really like composting bucket, is in your grow when you pull off leaves and stuff like that. To pull it off, whether you're just thinning out and you could be defoliating if you want to, or even if you just have lowers that you're cutting off, doing some lollipopping. If you're not going to clone it, for me, it just goes right in that bucket, and it going right back to some worms.
Yeah, exactly. I do that too.
Yeah, so that's a great place to keep something like that. And the OHN idea, I think, is pretty cool. I don't know about putting bud in, and I think maybe you might have a little too much weed on your hands if you're going to start fermenting it just to grow more weed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like,
Might
well,
need
I
to slow
definitely
down.
don't have a surplus like that to be able to just experiment with it yet. But I
Actually,
could start with the leaves because the leaves really have a lot of the cannabinoid content as well. I've made coconut
yep.
oil topicals just using the leaves, and they work for pain excellent. Like you
Same
wouldn't
here.
believe. And
Yeah.
I can definitely see that the leaves would add some value to Oriental herbal nutrient because you can use dry and you can use fresh ingredients. So there's ways to mix it up as well. And I was thinking maybe dry leaves. I don't know. You know what? When
I can see
I'll
some
cross
dry
that bridge when I
trim for
get there, I
sure.
guess. But
I,
yeah,
I
definitely,
was
definitely.
I was
Post
under
sift, Keith, calm down. Post sift.
Hmm?
We
post
make
sip.
sure and sift it before we fermented it. I know
Oh,
how big you are.
Right,
what I
right.
was gonna what I was gonna say is, so if you're making bubble, because I've been making a ton of bubble with trim, after I run the bubble, I got a bunch of just wet trim.
Yeah,
Organic matter. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, shit, I've never thought of just putting that in there. That would be,
Well,
gee, like,
I
I
feed
think
it to
I'm gonna
worms.
try that. Like, definitely trying that in the next 30 days. That's happening.
I was under the understanding, now maybe this is when you just
Yeah.
use it for compost. I was under the understanding that it was not a good idea to use cannabis organic matter for compost. Now you're talking about fermenting, so maybe that's different. But does anybody have an opinion on that? I was under the impression you did not want to use your leafy matter of cannabis to make compost to grow in. So
I'm of the
The
opinion that
only
that is
reason
wrong.
I could
Only
see against that would be the added nitrogen value. That's the only thing I could see against doing that.
No, I mean they could potentially be a pathogen vector, but if you're using something like lactobacillus in order to help increase the speed of that breakdown, as well as compost tea, you're going to have so many beneficial microbes. You're not going to have to worry about that.
okay, okay, I just wanted to clarify because I know
Right.
some other people.
To get a little more in detail, like with the Oriental herbal nutrients, you're gonna do the fermentation depending on what it is. Like if you're using a fresh ingredient, you're gonna start it off the same way that you would with a fermented plant juice or fermented fruit juice. And me personally, I always make sure to spray my plants with lactobacillus because that keeps powdery mildew away. Like I've like never had powdery mildew since I've started spraying with lactobacillus. So it has endless benefits as far as that goes. But so I'll take that. Obviously it's already populated with lactobacillus, and I'll throw that in and do the fermentation that way. And if you're using dry leaves, then you're actually going to use a wine or a beer, like a low content alcohol beverage to do the rehydration process, and then you'll add sugar back in that way, and then it's really a long drawn out process, which is why I mentioned if you really want to see how that goes down, check out that dude Chris Trump's channel because he really goes into detail with it.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds awesome because you're going to get to see all the different nutrients that you can produce from different like produce.
Yeah, exactly.
Produce
I
from
mean,
produce.
you can use stuff that you grow on your own. One thing that I've done in the past, like last year, I had some tomato plants growing outside, and I used that to do a fermented plant juice. And that, whenever I use that, that really, like, if you want something to really make your plant start branching out, that seems to have hit the nail on the head for me. Because if I need something to start branching out, I'll mix that fermented plant juice up that I made from the tomato plant, and that just makes them just really start shooting out stems.
So you're making a tomato ferment and that's not having any kind of negative impact, even though it's a nightshade?
No, I mean, I fermented it the same way I've done anything else, you know, and I spray it foliarly. I don't know why. Uh, I guess you can go ahead and educate everybody on why that would have negative implications.
Oh, just nightshades have a couple of different compounds in them that are they call it lilipathy. Basically, tomatoes they release histamine and a couple of other compounds, basically to make other plants not grow as well near their root system, so that they can, steal all the nutrients from the soil.
Hmm.
Have you guys ever heard of companion plants? Those are plants that they don't necessarily attack each other underground, whereas you have plants that don't like to be around each other, that'll constantly go to chemical war, in the root system. Think of it as the same way as like a reef, like on a coral reef. The coral is always fighting each other at night. A lot of people don't know that, but they'll release tentacles and attack each other at night, or release different chemicals to make each other not grow very well.
Oh no.
Yeah, one thing I've heard that has that, I guess, ability that kills off other plants or releases whatever to not make them grow as well as sunflower. That's one thing I've heard about.
Yeah. Well, I've heard the same thing that Steve was talking about. I think he got disconnected there. I've heard the same thing, is that you wouldn't want to do that with tomato leaves, which isn't, I mean, a lot of people told me a lot of stuff not to do about aquaponics that I've already done. It's turned out fine. So,
Seriously, right?
I really don't want to get too much into it, but I have heard the same stuff, we'll say the same rhetoric about tomato stuff, and it doesn't surprise me that you didn't necessarily, like, people always act like, oh, if you do this, then your plants are just going to shrivel up and die, and it's just not.
Right.
Maybe there are some sort of ill effects you didn't notice, or maybe it didn't have any at all, or maybe it provided an amount of stress to your root system that creates something that you like branching out more.
Right.
Like maybe there's an element that's detrimental, just like super cropping is detrimental to the stem, right? But it's still beneficial overall. Hey, welcome back, Steve.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My internet connection blipped out for a second here.
Hey, no problem.
Living out of hotels until I find a place here, so it's just taking forever to find a place up here in the Bay Area, as it is.
Yeah, so we were just continuing what we were talking about, the same sort of, like that. I heard the same stuff about tomato leaves and stuff before from other people as well, that you didn't want to ferment them or use them in any type of stuff like that because it would inhibit their growth. And so we were just sort of talking about, how that, maybe true on a certain level, but it's not like your plants are just going to shrivel up and die if you, feed that to them. And in this case, who knows, maybe it's causing a small amount of stress that's having the plant that he's seeing branch out more and create more branches because of. So just a theory, we're spitballing.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it works in low dosing and there's no impact, then hey, maybe. Again, this is how we all learn. I mean, I did a bunch of experimenting with lab stuff. I've done a bunch of experimenting with teas. Marty, you've done a ton of experimenting with teas as well in a totally different direction than I have. I know. So it's always, this is how we learn new stuff. But I guess traditionally people have been told to avoid nightshades in labs or ferments. But it's interesting that you've had very different results.
I think it's still a good idea to err on the side, though, until it's maybe a little more proven. Because, like Marty said, stress is something.
I just wouldn't spray it in flour.
we talk.
Yeah, I only use it for the veg because of the effects that it has. It really seems, like I said, I mean, what I've seen is that it really causes stuff to really start branching out, and obviously, I don't want to prolong the flowering season or really, I don't know, cause whatever side effects of extra high nitrogen might do, That's pretty much what I mostly use it for, is just veg,
And if you are running super high nitrogen, make sure your molybdenum and your silica is high, because it'll help make it easier for those plants to process that and tolerate those higher nitrogen levels without having issues as much. especially if you're running, above 120 or 160 or something in a veg system, they'll just do better.
Cool beans.
So hopefully that answers the what do labs do? Are they a chelate or do they break down minerals? They help break down both some of the minerals and make them more bioavailable, as well as the proteins of whatever you're trying to ferment.
In that process, end up chelating, right? I mean, that's, as it consumes, it breaks those bonds, I guess is kind of the way I look at it.
Right.
But it also helps the microbial process. That's the whole point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you're actually with the lactobacillus. That's the whole point. Is like you're supplementing the microbes. That way, you have a. You're trying to control the microbes that break it down. Basically, you want it to be stuff that, like with the lactobacillus, one of the benefits of it is it keeps pathogens away. So you don't want to give another microbe a chance to get a foothold in what you're trying to ferment. I mean, which is one of the points that Marty made earlier.
Right. Yeah, we discussed that in depth too. Yeah.
Right. So if we just kind of go back to my cow analogy, it'd be like if cows could actively defend themselves, they were like half cow, half wolf or something, so that they were also, that's kind of why that microbe is selected and used so often, is because it will outcompete everything that's there. So if you put in a food source, so just imagine like, when we put in a food source, it's like just a huge field full of grass already grown this tall, and they can just come in and eat as much as they want to. And once it's all eaten down and it's relatively one height, and you just have a little bit of growth and a little bit of consumption as opposed to a large food source. That's what we're talking about, being stabilized, right? So you don't have a big bloom anymore. So just like if the field was already grown 4 foot tall full of grass, you'd have a whole bunch of food readily available, no cows eating it. And then you release all the cows, they eat everything down, and then you would eventually reach an equilibrium. And then that's kind of what our analogy is here for stabilization. Does that make sense, Roger?
That's excellent. Yeah, and I think everybody else there can understand everything we've gone through because we've broken it down so far tonight. It's fantastic show tonight. Sometimes the best shows I found, I always think we say the best shows are with a guest, and sometimes like last week's show, it basically turned into a guest and Steve and Brain Grow. And I'm telling you, man, I watched the whole show and it was freaking awesome. Because y'all just started talking about teaching people how to do shit, Yeah, like tonight, this is great. Yeah, I'm having a good night. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Marty, and all of you guys for, allowing me to question you and break it down from all the beginners and potential aquaponics growers out there. Because even for organic growers, there's so much to offer to hydroponics and organic. Not as much, because you're not going to dump, concentrates, that turn your and thicken up your resin hydroponics so much. But in organic grows or soilless grows, I can see this. Like I'm doing soilless grows right now. I've been through hydroponics. I got a greenhouse with 250 plants. I don't need to do hydroponics experiments. I'd rather do small experiments, and I've been going through a soilless phase, and I can see in a soilless phase, just like it's like your dual root zone. I'm kind of taking your dual root zone, the top layer, and thinking of it like that, and adding that kind of thoughts to growers that want to do soilless, that haven't got to aquaponics or hadn't decided to take that step. And so I find it fascinating, just like the Korean natural farming and the the organic nutrient, what'd you call it, Brain Grow? What organic nutrients or something like that?
The Oriental herbal nutrient.
Oriental herbal nutrients. I could see that applied to soilless, and even soil for people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
On the organic side, and that's what that's what I'm having a blast. And then I know that we've got some listeners, and we're developing a wider range of listeners, and with the help of what Brain's been doing support and sharing some of this information about this Korean natural farming on ILGM. at the forum. So I'm really excited about it for that. And I think if we can get people to keep listening and understand us, just because you don't want to grow aquaponics doesn't mean it's not a good idea to listen to people talk about what it takes to make a stable microbial and beneficial environment for both fish and for plants, because it works both ways. So, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe just
Absolutely,
one
man.
caveat on the OHN thing is that it's definitely not the easiest one to start with. Like,
Exactly. That's the most difficult one.
yeah, it's like 3 or 4 stages depending on which method you use. And so just, have your notes ready, or maybe even if you're just starting out, maybe do some labs first. And because it's a similar process, kind of a similar idea, but just not quite as involved. There's a couple more steps in the OHN process, but yeah, it's awesome. And there's like you mentioned, the CalFOS. There's really ways in which growers produced all of the things you can buy off the shelf before you could buy them off the shelf. Like we've, as humans, have grown stuff for thousands and thousands of years. So obviously not everybody was growing with General Hydro 1,000 years ago. So, there are ways to make this shit. And so it's really cool to see a lot of them coming back around and being used again. And so I hear a lot of the rhetoric when you get into, like when I talk with even growers that I know now that are still synthetic hydro growers, and I'm sure you probably get it on your forum a lot, that are just like, oh, well, it's too much work to supplement aquaponic systems, or it's too much work to, make your own food or go organic or all this other stuff. And it's just really, like really not that difficult. Like once you start just trying to match up product to product, like it's not like you got to make 5 different things to replace CalMag. You might have to make 1 or 2 different things to replace CalMag. There's really only, a limited amount of stuff you can do. And some of this stuff you can make it once a year and keep it in concentrate form and be able to store it up. So there's a lot of, I feel like, really unfair comparisons between, like, yeah, maybe it's difficult, or it takes some, it takes 2 weeks to make your plant food. Well, yeah, it takes me 2 weeks to make plant food for 6 months. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And so that's that's some of the frustration around where I feel like a lot of people just make excuses to continue spending money, because otherwise they have to admit to themselves that they've been spending a lot of money they didn't have to for a long time. And while I understand that, I just encourage all of them to start, just pick something and make it, and understand that you can then make it and replace it, and how long it will actually last, so that you can get a fair comparison. Don't be like, they'll read over the thing on the internet and be like, oh, this takes 2 weeks, fuck that. Well, yeah, it takes 2 weeks, but understand when you're done with that process, you're set for a year. And if you make enough of it, and it's really not that much different to make 5 gallons versus 1 gallon. You just get a different bucket, a little more product. So, I definitely feel like there's that missing piece of that debate that comes up all the time in forums, sometimes in our group, in the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers group. And it always baffles me that it's too much work for a hydro grower to supplement an aquaponic system, and yet they will pour everything into their hydro system. But
I think that in answer to
Yeah, exactly. I was actually fixing to say, technically it's less work because we have nitrogen covered.
right, we have
Yeah.
nitrogen.
Yeah.
There's no need to do anything with that. And then also the water changes are just significantly less. That's, I'm just talking man hours in the garage. I'm a self-admitted lazy motherfucker, and that's like the reason I don't like pulling weeds. I don't even like my outdoor beds that much. They can get mostly neglected because they can't have cannabis right now. I have strawberries and stuff in them, but there's weeds in them too, and I just let it grow over because I don't like pulling weeds. I'm lazy. And so I think personally aquaponics is a lot less work than hydro, and I've done both of them, and I've done outdoor, and I've done soil, and I've done all of it, and I still think aquaponics is by far the easiest in terms of maintenance, because for the most part you can feed the fish. Sometimes you can not even feed the fish. Like I've left my systems completely alone for up to 5 days and not really noticed any kind of difference whatsoever in the middle of flower. So I really feel like it's the most flexible growing environment. It allows you to kind of keep this continuous microbial culture going that you can feed different stuff to. A lot of the stuff you see in
Exactly.
probiotics.
And
Just
to make another argument, you know, aquaponics is probably downright more fun to use than any other method if you can learn how to use it right, because you can incorporate all methods into what you're doing. You know, you can incorporate soil growing into what you're doing, and you're already incorporating hydroponic growing into what you're doing. Plus, you're adding fish, and like you mentioned, the microbial life that you have to sustain as well.
right, you have to, or your system crashes. I mean, it's like, you know, it's literally a culture, right? I mean, if you think about it, like I
Exactly.
harvest mine to feed to my sips. I harvest microbial life to feed to my raised beds from my outdoor systems. All of those things that I mix my tea into, I'm just taking a piece of that culture and that microbial life, whether I'm taking solids from the filter or just some water from the tank, media from the beds, the filter paper we talked about in the sips, all of that is just extending the culture, in my opinion, to different parts and allowing those nitrifying bacteria to do the job that they would normally do in nature. So we talk about like biomimicry, right? We pretty much everywhere that you see an underground water source here is encountered some sort of fish waste in with the combination of the nitrifying bacteria that breaks it down. It's a natural existing thing for pretty much every water table to be encountered by some sort of fish waste. It's just sort of the natural way of being.
And not only that, I mean, there's a separate microbial web for phosphorus, and that's where something like Mammoth P comes in. There's a separate one for, potassium. You know, there's a separate one for zinc, a separate one for iron, a separate one for everything. You know, there's a little, chain of microbes that help get it to the plant. Or, there's a fungi or a mycorrhizae. Actually, since we're on this topic, and since there is quite a few people releasing information and data on this, do you guys want to talk for a second on that Aquaponic Association's little paper that got put out about the microbial analysis of aquaponic systems versus a well-composted organic soil?
We know you want to talk about
I
it.
actually didn't get a chance to read that, Steve, but I will let you go ahead and take the floor on that.
Oh yeah. So actually, why don't I just open it here real quick, and I can actually cite hard numbers. But basically, so they did this study. Maybe prefaces. The soil grower, organic growers. There's a small little cult of them that have formed, and they're trying to push out all soilless growing from being organically certifiable. Now, there is no scientific basis for this. There is no health safety issue basis for this, and there is no difference in Brix level, nutrient value of the final crop. It's strictly just marketing bullshit and greed, where these guys are trying to carve out a little monopoly for themselves and screw over everyone else, just for the sake of monopolizing the organic label. And that's the only thing it's about. So they went and funded a study to test the microbial biodiversity of aquaponic systems at different commercial farms around the United States against the microbial biodiversity of a bunch of different composted microbes from soil microbe farms. What they found was the aquaponic systems had more bacteria, more protozoa, more mycorrhizae, and everything else that was plant beneficial was found in more biodiversity and in greater quantities per square inch or per square meter than anything else.
Boom. We got more microbes, bitch.
Yeah, so their whole little rant
Totally thought that was
and everything just completely backfired.
Yeah, well, one thing you got to think about that too is with the soil they were actually testing against, were they trying to add microbes and stuff, or they just measured some? I mean, where'd the measurement come from? I mean,
their argument is that they should only come from well-composted soil is the only thing that should be organic, which is
okay. So
ridiculous.
you're saying they're on their own merit. They're arguing that. Yeah, I agree with you. You can supplement purely organic soil too. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. That's an
I'm trying
excellent
to
idea.
find. I'm trying to find the exact article. Does anyone remember what? I'm trying to find it here.
So these were the
Anyways,
guys that were actually trying to prove a point. They got a point proven to them.
yep.
Hey,
Yeah.
Steve. I know we're going to be talking about this article in just a second here on the show, but I really do feel that with the population of no-till growers and soil growers that we have in the Dude Grows community, this is definitely something that you should ask Scotty and Brett if you could bring up on the show.
Oh, heck
just to
yeah,
kind of
that
put
would be
people in their
fun.
place. Bring them over to
I
our
don't
side.
necessarily mean put them in their place, but definitely be like, look, like,
No. We are better than everyone else. We need to establish that.
okay, the aquaponic master race.
Aquaponic Elite.
I'll end
You're
up
the
like
final gardening solution.
end up like the PC versus console thing with the
Oh my
No,
god.
that's not
man.
a debate.
Let's not
the-
go into that.
with the PC
There's no
master, with the
debating that.
PC master race and the console peasants.
Consoles
No, if you want to base that argument on logic real quickly to shut it down, PC is the best because PC gets all the fucking games.
And to clarify, there's
No, see, here's what it is, because console games, the only reason that they exist is to get the kids off of the PC so dad can play the PC. That's because
Yes.
PC is the best. That's really all it is.
Dad doesn't
Go
play
play
on the
the
PC.
Xbox.
Dad uses
Leave
the
the fuck
PC to
alone.
go look at something and
Time to
scream
game.
it.
Go let
Daddy
Ellie
needs to use
What does
the
the
VR.
chat think?
while
No,
you
I'm
play
just
Halo.
kidding.
Just deal with it.
Gamers, huh? Bunch of gamers.
Actually,
So who
I
we
had, I had a quick thing. So Fish Ganjaga, you were featured, I think, on DGC, or you were the
Oh, yeah, they had me as executive producer again today.
okay. I didn't know if you were on there or not, or did anything.
Wait.
I didn't have a chance to listen to the episode yet.
Nah, he
Wait.
isn't anything. It's just because I helped Scotty out with some stuff while he was on his vacation, made sure that his vacation with his wife, which was long overdue, was actually a good romantic one. I scared him away from all the tourist traps up in the bay.
Yeah, I did that too. Actually, let's talk about that a second. So, shout out to the DGC. They actually gave a big shout out to Ouroboros Farms, where I teach at. I'll actually be teaching a cannabis class out there next weekend, the in-person one, and then we're gonna set up hopefully for August for the for the next.
Actually, I think they gave a shout out to Ouroboros Farms.
Yeah. Hey,
Boro.
you know, he tried, but he came out and he visited and got a nice tour of it. And you know, definitely go check out the DGC episode number 455. They talk, you know, Scotty talks about his visit to the farm and some of the stuff that's going on over there. So, yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Thanks for talking about aquaponics and helping promote the cause.
Yeah, I got a
So
question.
we got live watching in chat tonight.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free. We've been averaging about a dozen
Been
or more
hanging out for a
viewers.
while now. Grow Life's been hanging out.
Nice.
What is weren't we going to have a review of the Spectrum King versus Black
Oh
Dog
yeah,
lights? I mean, isn't there
Ganja guy,
somebody
do you
in the
wanna-
house that has some information to share with all
do you
of
want
us?
to touch
Yeah,
on that at all yet?
I
or
got
no?
all the lab results back except for one because after I
Ah!
dropped them off to the delivery guy, who couriers it down to San Diego, about 3 hours from me, I got home and noticed that one of the samples from the Black Dog side was still laying on the floor. So I have to get that either to the courier this week because he only does one run a month, or I'm just going to carrier pigeon it down to the lab because it needs to get done. But overall, I know who the winner is. It is definitely clear that when it comes to yield, Spectrum King definitely won it. But the study wasn't about that. It was about the potency differences from the spectrums because everything was the same except for the spectrum. It just had some panda film separating the room down the middle. So that was the only difference. It was same phenotypes that were in the study, come from the same mom, and So
Oh,
far,
got
I
me
have
going.
2 samples that I decided to use. One was Cross of the Titans, and the other was Crystal Cookies number 4. And I have the Cross of the Titans result back, and there is a 2% THC difference between them. I just want to get that other one from the Crystal Cookies back, so that way I can make sure that it's both going towards the one lighting company and not one is one way, one's the other way, because that would just be inconclusive.
Strain
So
dependent.
I just want to hold on and wait until I get that other result back, because they're completely different genetics on those 2 plants. So I know that it's not going to be a strain dependent thing.
No, okay. Because it could be actually, yeah, it could actually be. The light might affect
So,
it.
I don't want to
to
speak too soon. I want to make sure I get all my stuff back from the lab. Unfortunately, I can't do the terpene profiles for it yet. I'm going to save a couple nugs just because I want to do that down the line. But
Oh my god.
I've had bad experiences with
What's that?
SC Labs, so I don't want to work with them again because they really screwed me around the last time. So the lab that I'm going with these days, they aren't going to have terpene profiling or testing available until end of the year. They're supposed to have it earlier this year, but we're running a little behind. Shit happens. It's expensive equipment, so I can't really hold it against them. But I'm trying to get those results as soon as I can, and I'll be announcing it on my channel and also here on the show.
Cool.
Awesome. Do you want to make any statements about that at all, or as far as?
I know what you're hinting towards. All I can say is, yeah, there are a couple things about one of the lighting companies that I was not fond of. One of the issues I addressed with them, and it sounded like they really didn't care. But there are things that growers need to be aware of. So, actually, I'll just go ahead and say the 2 things, because people should be aware of this before they choose which light they want. With Black Dog, there were 2 things that definitely stood out to me. Actually, was it 2? Yeah, 2 things. One, if you're using ladybugs in your garden, you're going to have a lot of dead ladybugs inside your lights. Between grows, I have to empty out probably close to 200 ladybugs from each light from Black Dog, because the fans suck them in and keep them in there. And that is a fire hazard issue, I feel. I think that they need to put like a screen up instead of just having open air cages to block like large objects coming in. They should do a kind of bug screen that still allows ample airflow. But that is a fire hazard, in my opinion, if you're running ladybugs like I do. The other thing, and this is something that I did address with them, and I'm hoping that they are working to correct it, is originally I was using a 240 line with a wall outlet timer, and those wall outlet timers, when used at 240, allows about 5 volts of electricity to leak through. I checked it with the meter, and it's not just one brand, it's all brands. So the Spectrum Kings stayed off when it was supposed to be in the dark period, but the Black Dogs picked up that extra 5 volts, and they glow in the dark enough that I could read a magazine underneath them. So, but if you use like a full-on like light control box, like one of the $200-300 ones, it completely shuts off the power flow 100%. So you can run it no problem on the 240. So, but I checked the 240 cable on my Phytomax 1 series and the 2 series, and it was the same issue. So I'm hoping that they're going to correct that with their driver. But they work fine on the 110 volt, 120, whatever it is. And if you have a lighting control box, there's no problem with the 240 whatsoever. It's just if you're using that wall outlet timer. But I do feel that they should have a disclaimer on their site when you're choosing the 240 volt cord to say, make sure you have this lighting box. Otherwise, people are going to be assuming that they're in the dark period in flower, and really there's a glow. And that's just going to stress their plants out, keep them forever veg. It's going to cause issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, and they're a good company with great customer service. I'm hoping that they were receptive to my feedback and that they're working to improve upon that. But those are just 2 things that I noticed about that light. Then those are just issues that I didn't have from the Spectrum Kings.
I remember you talking about that issue with the Black Dogs staying on, weeks ago, and doesn't take a long time to add a little annotation to your website. And last I checked, it still wasn't there. So
Yes, you're right. It's a matter of the tech going in and open up a page on the server in the folder and on the file and replacing the text. That's it. Adding a lot of text.
And this is something that I brought up to them about 2.5, 3 months ago. So I'm hoping that they've managed to do something about adjusting the drivers since then.
Right. But even still, while they were doing that, or they could have even tested it themselves, I still think, like you were saying, maybe a really good option to have would be to just make a note of it. When you see
that's the cheapest. That's the cheapest fix right there. They don't even have to do anything to fix their tech. They just have to put that up and make it just leave it the way it is.
It's just the driver. So a lot of drivers have a mechanism in it. I forgive my ignorance at the moment on the name of the part, but there's a mechanism where once it drops below a certain threshold, it kills all the power going through the driver. So specifically with LEDs, because you're running milliamps through them and they're super, super sensitive, even if you're running a quarter watt or half watt through them, it's still going to glow enough to, like he's saying, read underneath of it.
Yeah, they told me that the reason that it was picking that up is because they have a more efficient driver than some other companies. But to me, I thought it would be more efficient if it was not picking up that little bit and staying off when it was supposed to. But
right, you would think not consuming that power, because obviously if it's glowing, it's consuming that power. So you would think that's probably not terribly efficient to be consuming power when it's supposed to be off. So that's just kind of and again, they've had a little while on it, and hopefully they. The only reason I want to bring that up is because I do think that the best thing to do would be, if you want to continue and test it or fix it or adjust your driver or whatever, all that's great. I think that they should do that, but they don't have to. What they do, in my opinion, have to do, and they should do whether they fix it or not, is just put that little blurb up there that says, hey, if you're going to use it, make sure you at least have this, or this is going to happen. And I think they could test that, be sure of it, and be able to list that inside of the time they've already had, and hopefully they'll just decide to do that soon.
All right, guys. Well, I gotta cut out. I gotta go start making dinner for my wife. But it was great hanging with everybody. I learned a ton. I'm gonna be re-listening to all that stuff about the lactobacillus because I'm gonna give that a try. And now I know how to do it right. And at a scale that's probably what I'd be doing with that 8-ounce jar to the 1 gallon of milk, like Brain was saying. That's around my scale. And just want to check, Steve, would you say that's more something to put into the when you get that mix done, for the aquaponic water or in the soil zone, both?
Steve, you're muted.
Oh, you can put it in both. In fact, Marty actually uses it as pH down. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So if you.
Yeah, I was actually talking about how I use it. Like I throw it in a 1 gallon pump sprayer and saturate my grow beds with it, and you get amazing root growth with that.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I do that too. I hit the whole media bed, and I hit the dual root zone. Like especially if I have a plant that I feel like is having, showing particular issue. Like I find myself mostly reactionary gardening, as opposed to people that put in, actively dose stuff. So when I see an issue with a plant, that's usually when I hit the dual root zone more particularly. But for the most part, I just hit the whole bed. Or I do like to add liquids into the media bed. So I pretty much put everything in the bed, into different media beds as opposed to into the tank. That's just what I do. I don't know why. I just feel like
I grow that way too, even though I'm not a big, hadn't done aquaponics, just starting out. But I'm the same way. I'm a reactionary grower. I don't like to mess with my plants unless they show me they need help.
Or underproducing.
Yeah, they look healthy and big.
Yeah, right.
Let them grow.
All right, guys. I'll talk to you later. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Fish. Thank you, Fish.
Bye.
That was nice to have him around a while tonight. Good information.
Yeah, he was abnormally quiet for Fish.
Well, he was learning. He just said he learned stuff tonight. See, even Fish County guy learned stuff tonight. So look for all you new guys out there. Look, that guy's
hey, we lost one, we gained one. Now Dummy's here.
All right.
Dummy!
Let's get an update from Dummy and what's going on with me. I
Hey,
had
what's
some
up?
amazing posted the other day.
Yeah, tell him what I've won.
I can't stay on. I want to, but I can't stay on tonight. But I did want to give away. I got a Rosnier toolkit. Compliments of myself and ILGM, and of course Rosnier. They sent me one to give away to whoever we choose tonight. So I wanted to make sure that that gets done.
Awesome. Well, if you're, we got plenty of people watching live right now. If you're in chat watching live, say something in chat here, and we'll pick. I don't know. Tell us how your 710 was in chat, and we'll pick someone and send them the dab kit. How about that? So if you're in chat,
Excellent
know right now.
suggestion.
There's only 9 of you. That's pretty good odds.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to, dummy?
Not much. I got a lot of personal stuff going on right now that I didn't really want to bring up in the show here, but
Sure.
The garden's kind of suffered from it.
Oh, yeah, that happens.
So,
Turns out that you do have to work at it every once in a while, right?
yeah.
Well, I hope your personal stuff gets sorted out soon. We appreciate you dropping in at least for a minute, man. You're always coming in to give us stuff. We love that.
All right.
Well, I've been meaning to jump on. I was going to come last week, but I had issues there too. So.
Hey, Chicken Hole says to say hi. He's in chat.
All right, we got a winner. Blue Coral. Looks like they were the first ones to respond. So Blue Coral, if you would email, actually here, why don't you give him your email so he can you can type it in for him, or how to find you know what, I'll get his contact info, and then you and I already are talking. Blue Coral email potentponics@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you, and we'll get that toolkit to you.
It's actually a really nice toolkit, by the way. It's I don't know if you guys have saw my video online there, but I did a small review at the end of the video anyway. It's really nice. I think it has like a $49 value on it too. So
That's
Awesome.
Nice. That's nice.
Was that the one that comes with
Yeah,
the
I
little?
caught that video. I was actually
Yeah, it was good. I
I was
liked it.
actually already looking at that unit on Amazon, and then I've actually seen that Walmart supposedly has started selling the same units from the
Yep.
same company.
yeah, I don't know if it's version 2 though. I definitely saw version 1 at Walmart.
Like
There you go.
Oh, okay, cool,
in
cool.
a
I
store,
love that, man.
like physically in a store,
Yeah,
or on the
at
website?
Walmart.
Like all
No,
the
There you go.
Affiliate
Physically at a store?
yeah.
For real?
Okay, can I?
What is the
Chicken
legit reason they're selling that for? Like lavender oil or something?
They say it's a rosin press.
Yeah, it's labeled as a resin kit.
Yeah. But they're coming right out. It's a resin press. Yeah.
It doesn't say cannabis resin, but it might as well have a big fucking pot leaf on it. Just saying.
Right.
$199. Hydraulic.
Yeah,
or
the
whatever.
price I've seen on that is better than anything else that I've seen, and I'm definitely looking into
But here's
getting
my
that unit.
question. So my question after watching it, and I don't mean to like poo-poo your equipment if you have one. So what was it, 5 grams in, and then he got, what did it work out to be, about 17%, I think was my rough math on that?
Yeah, 17, 18. It was because my scale sucks. So shit, I can't even remember now. I was high when I made that video, man.
What's the PSI on that? Do you know?
Honestly, I don't know offhand. I really don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious because it looked like it just wasn't as high as PSI as some stuff that's out there. That was the
No,
only.
it's not. Actually, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be talking about, but I know they're coming out with a more of a commercial version of it. here in a couple of months, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come out with. And I know that's,
Oh, cool.
I think it's rated a lot better. I'll put it that way.
It'd be interesting to see another commercial rosin press. We're gonna actually, on that note, I've been in talks. Dax Tractor is gonna be. We tried to get him on the show a couple of times. He's gonna be on the show here. He's was trying to be on the show tonight, and then he was running. He got stuck in traffic coming back from Chalice, so he just wasn't able to join us because he's stuck in traffic. So. You know, we'll get him on. So thanks again for trying, buddy, and we'll get you on in an upcoming week. And we have Matt from Mountainside Glass next week, which will be super cool.
That's cool. Well, I got a couple more minutes here. I'm gonna stay on. Maybe I'll chip into whatever.
Yeah, do you want to talk about your grow? You posted a bunch of content about your grow recently. They look really awesome. You posted a video in the group. Looks really cool. You want to talk a little bit about that at all, or?
Oh, that's not mine. That was a buddy of mine. That's Johnny Fives.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, he had to come up with a pseudonym, so I guess together we came up with Johnny Five. It was really good. He's got an awesome grow. That's a deep water culture, recycling deep water culture aquaponics. It's awesome. The only thing he was missing in the video is pictures of his fish, which he sent it to me after. I actually helped him make that little video there, so.
Cool.
It needed to be shown because honestly, I haven't seen anybody doing return deep water or recycling deep water culture in aquaponics, or not on a large scale anyway. So it's really nice.
Very cool. Yeah,
I saw that video. That garden looked amazing.
It looked really healthy, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, he was having issues at first with some of the plumbing, and he had to redesign it a couple times. But I think it came out amazing. I mean, it really is a really nice system.
Nice.
Definitely seems to be producing now. I just checked out. I don't watch the whole video. I watched most of it, but obviously you could tell it was plants look good, and they're always the end all teller. You can have all kinds of fancy plumbing, but if your plants look like shit, they look like shit.
Right.
Well, hey, Dummy, did you post that at ILGM?
Yeah, Johnny Fives. Yeah, yep, I did.
Yeah, that's actually where I saw it.
Okay, I missed that. I've had a lot of computer and website domain issues lately. So.
Yeah, if you guys, if you're a newer listener to the show, definitely go check out ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. They have it's a forum. Roger is a moderator over there, and we have a whole aquaponics section on there. You guys can also, talk to each other over there if you don't want to be in a Facebook. Yeah, if you don't want to be on the Facebook group, if you don't like Facebook or whatever, or maybe you just don't want to mix work. Maybe your work's tied to your thing. You don't want to be caught liking pot stuff, or getting your friends being suggested you join the group or something, which has happened to someone that was on the show regularly. I won't out them, but I thought, suddenly his wife was being asked if they're, anyways, to join the group, and he was like, "Uh-oh, yeah, I gotta nip this in the bud." So that was pretty funny. But,
actually, Roger, you might be interested to know that I went to Google something to look up what some regulations were on recreational cannabis in California. I don't remember what I was looking up now, but anyway, I Googled it up, and your website came up third on Google in the responses. So I thought that was kind of cool. Thought you'd like to know.
Well, that's very nice of you to mention, and that's only because of the. After I was hired, I was able to make friends with several really talented growers, Dummy being one of them. Brain Grow now helps us out of the last 2 or 3 months, and now he's introducing all that Korean natural farming to the forum there, and then we've got some other talented people we've had, and it's all because of that. And Robert writes continuously. They keep churning out articles. The blog is just massive. It's got I don't know what do you think, Dummy? Like 500, 600 articles or so?
Oh, he's got a bunch for sure.
It's
articles too. They're very informative.
Cool. And then he has guest article people are writing, and And not to talk about talent and writing a great article. I haven't been able to talk to this gentleman for a while, but Dummy wrote a couple articles on our ilovegrowing.supplies.com, and with our teaching articles that were just incredible. They were just as professional as Robert's, and I was very impressed. Anybody out there, you want somebody to write a grow article for you? Yeah, that fella right there. When he's got time and he's feeling healthy, yeah, we try to. We've got an older thing. We got an older clientele there, and we got a real friendly, no bullshit forum where you don't get like it was brought up earlier in the show that you went to a certain group and they would cuss y'all out if you asked the wrong question or tried to suggest you might do a different process for your fermenting or whatever. And that doesn't happen at our forum. We don't allow that. If it comes up, usually our members cut them to the quick, or they bring one of our moderators in, and we don't allow that. So if you want to come to ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, you can come there knowing that you will be treated friendly. There's a wealth of information. All these guys pretty much, not everybody, but we're good. We're working on them all. But we've got people on the panel here, and they've been very generous with their time when they can spend it. And we've got a ton of excellent growers and expert members that aren't moderators that are always willing to share. And it's an older forum. It's a mature forum. It's not stoner kids. It's actually, it's just, the core membership is 45 to 65. I think, which is phenomenal for a cannabis forum and all. So thank you, Marty, for bringing it up. It was really nice, and and there's a lot of emotion going on. Seeing my friend back online tonight.
Cool.
Yeah, no problem. I actually just signed up too, so just so you know, I just signed up while you were talking about it. I happened to be on your website, so I signed up for your forum.
Let's share some of your stuff, man. You were talking. Oh, that's what the point I wanted to make. Thank you, Marty. And then I see Dummy wanted to say something too, but I wanted to say this to you earlier. On our forum, this is maybe the one forum where you talk about when you try to. If you show them what you're talking about tonight, what we're talking about tonight, our forum's more like they're more apt to try it, as opposed to saying like you were talking about the chemical growers now. These guys are crazy. They come on there. They're like 60, 55. They got money. See, they're not your average stoner grower. They got money. They build stuff. They buy stuff. They buy the $1,500 LED lights. You could really share some stuff with them, and it would blow up. It would just blow up. Aquaponics would blow up over there. And I apologize to Dummy too for not making a dedicated aquaponics forum before, but it's there now, my friend. It's there now, and Steve signed up, and Brain Grow signed up, and Marty just signed up, and hell yeah.
Right, I signed up a while ago.
Yeah.
So what else is new with Brain Grow? What's new with you and your grow?
Well, I've been working on some more mycology stuff. Started another few jars, and I'm using vermiculite and brown rice flour as my substrate this time. So hopefully that goes well. I'm on actually day 2 right now. And then besides that, I was sexing out one of my plants that I had in veg, and it was an early Durban strain. And today, it really showed me that it's fixing to start producing pollen sacs. So I'm fixing to cut that one down. That was one of the ones that I had just barely moved into flowering this week. So I'm fixing to cut that one down.
You should save it because the Durban pollen would be good to have. Move it someplace long enough just to flower.
I have 2 clones of it, and I was wanting to probably cross that with the CBD therapy. That way I can try to develop something that will have a nice diverse cannabinoid profile instead of like the CBD is just really heavy in CBD. You know that if you smoke it, I don't have a way to test it, but if you smoke it, there's like no high. You'll get like some relaxation effects, but there's absolutely no high with it, And then with the early Durban genetics, being as to how that has the Durban poison in it, I was wanting to probably go ahead and do that cross, because that actually has potential to bring out THCV as well.
Yep.
So maybe I can develop something that has a nice equal effect of THC, THCV with some CBD there, you know, and maybe even create different concentrations with. I was thinking I could do like 4 different variations where one of them is equal across the board, and then one where each of the different cannabinoids are dominant in that particular strain, which that's going to be a really long project to work on. So I'm going to get the seeds produced for now, and then I'll start working on the project once I have a way to do that, once I have more space and whatnot. But other than that, I think that's really all I have. You know, I'm looking forward to starting that breeding project.
Awesome. What about you, Aquaponic Dummy? You got anything else going on? Or anything else maybe new you learning about growing, or products or something you're exposed to you wanted to mention?
Honestly, it's with everything going on in my personal, nothing really has been going on other than
Okay.
a bunch of problems. What I came home to in my garden, lots and lots of problems.
I'm sure you'll get them sorted out soon enough.
Yeah, I'll get there. I'm not home full time. I'm actually home today. I'm home tomorrow. I think Saturday I'm taking off again. But yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back on full time here soon, hopefully.
Nice. Awesome. Well,
We
I
miss
wish
you,
you the best,
buddy.
brother. Yep.
Yeah, we miss you.
So what's new with you, Roger? What you got going on?
Oh, well, I'm trying to keep up with the farm. It's about 95 degrees every day, and trying to, I got my first, I started late because I plan on my grows going, vegetable grows going on in the fall more than the summer or the spring. And I got my first tomato yesterday of my new crop of stuff. So that's one thing I got going on. I got some nice tomato plants out there. And I'm actually doing that with the rain gutter grow system. I wanted to try that out because they made some claims, and I felt like it needed some help. And the tomatoes seem to do okay in it, but the peppers don't like it. So, as far as that goes. But on the cannabis front, well, we're just still chugging along at, IloveGrowingMarijuana.com, and we're building every day. And other than that, I'm still building the network. We're working on the big network we've been talking about for a few months. And my hosting service recently, we talked about that Monday, I think, but my hosting service recently sold out to another hosting company, and now my websites all my domains are shut down again. So we were ready to launch our support network and our live chat network, and had it all hooked up with a great calendar situation, so people all over could get a hold of all kinds of things, from veterans to computer illiterate people that are involved in cannabis. We can take all the people that are coming on where I'm finding needs where so many people don't know how to run a computer. They just decided they wanted to grow cannabis and got a computer and joined a cannabis site that happened to be ours. And so we're trying to do that. And if I can ever get this hosting thing straightened out, we're about ready to launch. And that's it. Just trying to keep up with the Joneses, basically. And one of these days I'll get caught up. And then, like I said, I'm getting ready to build an aquaponics system. And I just haven't. I keep listening because there's a lot of stuff we've been going through, and I want to set up something really cool the first time, so I'm not going to rush into it and try to do any particular kind of quick way to just do it. I want to plan it out really well because I have greenhouse, I have different size greenhouses and stuff that I can make a very nice aquaponics, grow area. So I'm constantly working on that, and you know, life's a bitch. So other than that, you know, we're doing good here. We're doing pretty good. You know, it's hot as hell. Thank you.
Awesome.
So where are we at?
You lose Steve again? You still there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hey.
Sorry, I had to take care of some real quick while we were doing. So finally got that stuff loaded. So here's the exact quote. So this is research summary. This is from courtesy of the Aquaponics Association. So this is aquaponics system utilization. Utilize the soil food web to grow healthy crops. The USDA's Hydroponic and Aquaponic Task Force case study of hydroponic tomatoes found the number of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and nematodes in the system was above expected levels found in typical organic soil.
All right, for those of you trying to keep up, this is where we were talking about earlier, the comparison of the organic soil versus the microbiological content of the aquaponic system. Okay.
Yep. And just remember, when we're doing dual root zone, we're getting all those aquatic ones that they're mentioning in this, but we're also getting all the terrestrial ones. So we're getting even double that with the dual root zone. So, and that's why your plants grow so well, you know, with the method that we use. So
We've
the soil
hijacked
food
your
web.
soil microbes.
Yep. So the soil food web microorganisms provide biocontrol and disease suppression, improving overall plant health and quality. Microorganisms break down solids and make macro and micronutrients more available to plants. Bacteria inhabiting the rhizosphere of the plant roots improve cell processes with the plant tissue. I think I lost connection. Fuck.
No, we still
No,
got you.
you're here.
No, you're
Okay.
good, Steve.
Okay, all of a sudden
Tell me muted, but that's all I saw change.
oh, that's what it was. The white noise went away. I thought I disconnected. Microbes aggregate on all surfaces within aquaponics and suspended in the water column. Roots are the hot spot for microbial activity with both bioponic, bioponic, they mean organic hydro and aquaponic. Systems and in soil. Micro niches within the systems provide bacteria ideal conditions for growth. Different system components provide unique environments and host varying microbial communities. How big and diverse is the soil food web? Bioponic systems have been found to host a comparable quantity and diversity of microorganisms of soil, if not greater. And then they cite the actual task force study. There's a bunch more to it. You guys can check this out if you want to see the whole thing. I'm sure it's up on the Aquaponics Association's website as well as their Facebook, or check it out over on the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Facebook group. I posted it up there. But they go into details and you know, a lack of certain negative pathogens that are found because of the stuff, and then they, you know, it's very well cited as well.
Yeah, they talk about how, you know, sort of outcompeting, you know, because of the large amount of beneficial bacteria, it outcompetes a lot of the pathogens. You know, it's kind of what, you know, the information that I saw on the pathogen stuff that they had linked was pretty much that, and it echoes the same stuff that you see pretty much everywhere else when you talk about, you know, we talked about competition earlier when we were talking about lactobacillus in your ferments and making sure that you fed it the right stuff and you kept it healthy. And we're essentially talking about the same thing here for aquaponic systems. If you feed them the right stuff, you keep them healthy, you have proper drainage systems, you know, all those different things, then you're, you know, it's going to be the same situation. It's going to be dominated by beneficial bacteria. Therefore, in my opinion, and what these studies are saying is that it makes them significantly less likely to develop pathogens. So, makes sense to me.
Absolutely. Where was it here? I had one or two other cool things in here. I'm trying to find them again. So aquaponic grown lettuce has significantly lower concentrations of spoilage and fecal microorganisms compared to lettuce grown in soil. So,
oh, yeah.
how about them apples?
This is like hydroponics does the same thing. It's so clean, just clean. Yeah.
Right. Well, guys, I'm gonna have to take off, start getting these kids to bed. So I will talk to you guys next week. Maybe I'll try and catch Steve's podcast on Monday. Don't forget to check that out. And you can find me on my channel, AP Meds, on YouTube, AP Meds on Patreon. Roger, I just signed up, so make sure you approve me if I need to be approved. But we should be all set there. So thanks, guys, and I will talk to you later.
Yeah, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
So studies have shown that bioponic systems have between 1 million and 10 million colony forming units per millimeter of bacteria. And 10 to 1,000 colony forming units of fungi in bioponic systems. That is ridiculous compared to
Pretty
soil.
hardcore.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's some heavy colonization right there.
I'm not surprised, actually, though. Maybe you guys are surprised.
Well, no. It's not surprise. It's the fact that they now have like hard data to prove it. I've been preaching this for a long time, and the University of Hawaii backed it up. No, seriously, I've gotten into some pretty big forum debates with people over the safety of aquaponics and citing this thing, the biodiversity and the fact that you have all these different things. Unless you have horrible water conditions, you're not going to end up, or way too many fish or really horrible filtration, you're not going to end up with any issues because you have so many microbes and so many different organisms. Like for example, at Ouroboros, they have these little scuds, these little freshwater fairy shrimp, or seeds. They're like a large seed shrimp. I think it was, or no, I guess they're not seed shrimp, but there's a little, they call them scuds, a little copepod. They live in the water, live in the system there, and they eat all the little junk that builds up on his brush filters. He almost never has to touch his brush filters because they break it down, and it's so small, it's liquid, basically liquidized, and then goes back into the system so where the plants can use it again. So if you have the right microbial, and especially for media beds too, the scuds are great because they as long as you have the right species. They'll again, same deal, to make sure that they never clog, along with your worms, using black worms along with red wigglers and earthworms, so you have your different sizes covered. And there's other worms in between. You have micro worms, and there's another one that's white that's kind of in between the red wigglers and the black worms. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. They're white though. But if you have the different things breaking stuff down, you'll almost never have issues with, assuming you have proper filtration as well.
It's always good filtration and good ventilation.
Yep. So, well, I think we'll start to wrap the show up. It was an interesting show today. We ended up just kind of doing a bunch of how-tos, but I think we had a bunch of cool content. Does anyone have any questions from today? Can we answer any questions for anybody watching the show? We still got quite a few people watching live. Does anybody else have any questions? See if we have anything else earlier that didn't get answered, maybe.
That was a really good show, Steve, tonight. It was nice. A very nice show. I think sometimes it's great to discuss information and different methods and techniques of doing things because, it's a lot easier for people to listen to it. It'll make them more apt to go and read your stuff or watch other podcasts to find more in depth, even more in depth information. So I think it's always a good idea if we don't have a guest to get into this kind of thing. I mean, it's been great tonight. Like I said, when I got home last week, I listened to the show, and it was a great show last week. Very good show last week. So.
Well, you got us on Thursdays. You got Growers Roundtable on Fridays. You got Hash Church on Sundays. You got our news show on Mondays. You got Do Grows every 5 days a week. You got Grow from the Heart in Southern Cal. That's another good one. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some. Is there any other good grower ones you guys like?
So I think you pretty much named all the ones that I keep up with.
Well, you know what we can do then. Well, I've been threatening to make a podcast area since you just named off about a dozen or so. Um, I'll go ahead and make a podcast area, and well, you can help me load it up with the. I'll make a thing for all those. We'll make a podcast area and then do a subcategory of every different
I was gonna make like a
podcast.
blog post or something. Okay, so we got a question. I've heard that if you grow weed with certain plants like strawberries, it can change the flavors. I was wondering if it was just a myth or if it's true. So that actually goes back to, we were talking about lilipathy earlier, as well as to a lesser extent, you can have some uh, sometimes I've read, but I don't know if it's. I haven't seen any like white papers on it, but I've heard quite a few times that if you grow plants that have similar terpene profiles, that sometimes the mycorrhizae that are connecting to all the root systems can transfer some of the compounds that build those terpenes up, or you can take some of those terpenes from those other plants and liquefy them like in a lab with labs, the lactobacillus ferments, and then introduce them into the system that way. That might work, but in general, you're not, planting something next to it isn't going to really influence the flavor. Sorry. You'd have to actually just ferment, something that has a base, compound in it that would result in a terpene. Like limonene, for example, is in lemons and limes. You have and most citrus, for example. So you could make like a limonene based thing and introduce that if you diluted it. A lot of cleaners are made of limonene. You just got to be careful; it's antimicrobial. But just thinking off the top of my head, if you wanted like an example of something that would work, to an extent that way. So you actually see unscrupulous sellers in California will spray their plants with limonene sometimes and a couple of other things like isolated terpenes, or they'll just go buy a vial of $100 terpenes, put it in a spray bottle, and spray like 20 or 30 pounds of cannabis with the terpenes on top. So when somebody opens the pound bag, it's like, oh, this is great when they open it in the dispensary, but it's actually just like garbage. I've seen a lot of that in California.
Wow, that's unreal.
It's just crazy.
I can't believe it.
Alrighty, I think we're gonna wrap up the show. So everyone want Aquaponic Dummy, why don't you tell people how to find you? And
you can find me on Cannabis Aquaponics. I think it's either Aquaponics Cannabis or Cannabis Aquaponics. I never could remember. If you look up Aquaponic or search Aquaponic Dummy on YouTube, you'll find me.
Yeah.
Awesome. What about you, Brain Grow?
Well, I'm a pretty regular poster on Instagram at brain_grow, and I'm actually also pretty regular over at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. Probably fixing to start up just a little grow journal, something I can kind of just update a couple times a week with pictures and stuff like that, a little bit of commentary or whatever. And on YouTube, of course, I'm looking forward to starting up this breeding project, so keep an eye out on my YouTube channel, Brain Grow, as well. And I think that's pretty much got it.
Awesome. What about you, Roger?
Well, I'm at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. We run a good, clean forum and look forward to see you there. We've got a new aquaponics section. We're going to open a new podcast section, and just keep growing.
Awesome. You guys can find me. Actually, let me do some plugging real quick. Shout out to Dude Grows again. Much love. They promoted the Growing with Fishes podcast today, so please go over and check out the Dude Grows show. Check them out on YouTube. I know they post on iTunes and everything else, so go find them. They also shout out the DGC group on Google. Bunch of good guys over there if you're looking to meet other cool, similar to like what Roger was saying, just a super chill group of dudes where you're not going to end up, no one's going to attack you for asking a question. Go check out DGC Crew over at Dude Grows Crew on Google, as well as our aquaponic cannabis growers group on Facebook, and yeah, and then also check out Ouroboros Farms. I'll be teaching the aquaponic cannabis class next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, in person. So if you're looking to take a class, come out to Half Moon Bay. I'll be teaching the class, and then I will also be teaching a cannabis class in August. I gotta grab the dates again. I'm sorry for not having him available this second. I'll make sure I have him for next show. And then I'll also be teaching a one-day medicinal herb class along with their commercial class next week, or next month, sorry. And then you can check out their website. They have a bunch of other cool classes. He is one of the best business classes out there. He'll help you get your business plan together. He'll help you build a website, and everything in between. You know, how to build a system, all that stuff. So definitely check him out over there. And you know, they got a bunch of cool stuff going on. He's been building some new little test veggie grow systems to test some different ideas. It's kind of cool what he's got going over there. He's also got that really cool, I don't know if we've had a chance to talk about it yet on the show. He's got this cool scanner that's built into their testing, that's built into the top part of the greenhouse, that scans the plants with different light levels, and then looks for deficiencies in the plants using the camera.
Cool.
Yeah, so it can tell you like plant, you know, 14 plants down, 3 plants in, it's got, you know, low iron, you know, hit it with a little extra, you know, or whatever. It's kind of cool. It'll like report back to you, you know, which plants are having issues. So
I just want to, before we wrap it up here, I want to take a minute and thank Rosnier one more time, and of course ILGM. They're great group of guys. I mean, like personally, they really are a great group of guys over there. And like I said, Rosnier Rosnier is a great company. If you don't know, if you're interested in rosin, check them out. They really are probably the cheapest presses on the market right now, and they're as far as high quality press. Well, it's a very good press for the money. So
well, let's reach out to them. Let's reach out to them and see if they want to come on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm already working. I'm already working.
Well, we'll also have like I was saying earlier too. Daxtractor will have on. The cool thing about theirs is that it's mobile. The whole thing fits into a tiny little case. I haven't seen anything that's you can kind of cart around. You know, if you're going to a bunch of clandestine grows, it's probably the best one I've seen. But the one you're talking about, there's definitely is. I'm really interested. Just it's kind of weird just to see like a mainstream rosin press. It'd be kind of interesting to talk to them.
Right. Yep. Well, hopefully I'll hear back from them here shortly. I've already, like I said, they've already given me the free giveaway there. So I'm hoping also that, well, they have another line coming out here in a couple months. So I'm hoping to do another review shortly of their new professional model. So
awesome.
We'll see what happens. So.
The other company I'll throw out there, just because I own one and I'm super happy with them, and these guys have been really awesome to me so far, and they've even been on the show, is if you guys are looking for, because the other guys, you know, they don't have their commercial one out yet, but check out purepressure.com. Or gopurepressure.com, I think is the website. The Pikes Peak Rosin Press, it's the one that I use, and it's definitely one of the best ones out there, especially if you're doing a large amount of pressing at the time. You know, if you're going to do a couple grams at a time, yeah, the other, you know, there's other ones out there that have higher PSI and stuff like that. But when you're actually trying to do bulk stuff, you know, real quickly, is definitely the one that I've enjoyed using the most. I've used quite a few different ones, at least if you're trying to press, you know, whole ounces at a time, or, you know, ounce and a half of bubble or something like that, all at once in one shot. You know, you can do that with this.
What's the cost, Steve, on that?
I think they start at $5,600.
Okay, so now you'll know where the ballpark you're in now. There.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So you're looking at $6 to $7 grand, depending on what kind of bells and whistles you want. And
Some of us will be Googling that.
You know, just save some of your harvest money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the other cool things that you can do, you know, especially if you're doing bulk bubble, is to use a freeze dryer. You can dry it out real quick. So you can also do like Brain Grow was saying, you know, do fresh cut down stuff and immediately, you know, get it as cold as you can, and it's almost like a live rosin. It comes out really good. So
Yeah, you think, hey, Brain, you think that's because it gives it moisture and cool, because of cooling it down and it gives it the moisture, so it causes it from burning it up so much, and so more easily, you know, you can extract that oil from it.
Well, I think it has more to do with I don't
There
know,
you go.
personal preference really is what it boils down to because depending on at what stage you extract the plants, you're going to get a different flavor, you know, because if you, let's say you go all the way through the drying process but haven't cured yet, you're going to get a different flavor out of that than you would if you ran a material that is fresh or a material that has been dried and fully cured. So, I mean, it's really just boils down to personal preference.
Well, what is the general preference?
I don't know. I guess I feel like
Sorry.
you're probably gonna get the best product if you run maybe I don't know, you know, like I said, it's just really opinion based. I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, what do you think, Steve?
I think if you run it super cold, you get the better terpene preservation, so it ends up tasting much better.
Okay. There you go. And
Also,
why?
But
also
like
the
from a
also the
freshly cut plant or a dried plant or a cured plant, what do you
I've
prefer?
I've never done I've done fresh cut in a different manner than the method that you suggested. I'm real curious to try doing it the way that you suggested, with just, you know, fresh cut bubble. That sounds real interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's basically just the equivalent of doing a live resin version of bubble hash, you know. I feel like that's really all it comes down to.
Yep. So, all right, I gotta run, but I'm going to Steve at Ponics. Check out Ponics at YouTube if you're listening to the show on SoundCloud, and we have the other show on Mondays. Last Week in Cannabis, we try to cover news stuff. We go over all different kinds of legal topics. Once in a while, we go on some fun rants. I know Marty had a pretty epic rant to start off this last week's show. I think it took us about
Well,
an hour to start doing actual news articles. It was pretty
we're
funny.
on Oregon. We're on a rant, a current rant that'll happen, I think, every week for a while until it's resolved on Oregon. The new policies that are really screwing over the medical marijuana growers in Oregon. That's what.
Okay, so
Well, I'm sure our government won't fail to give us anything to rant about otherwise.
Marty's rants are on Oregon have been going on since we started the show. Don't worry. So on that note, I'm gonna go take off. If you guys want to stay and keep going a little longer, that's totally cool. I need to get going this evening. That's up to you guys. If
Yeah,
not,
I
Glenn.
can take off here too. So
No, you can go and wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. We had a bunch of cool questions tonight. We got into some cool topics that I don't think we ever had a chance to fully maybe do step-by-step guides for, so that was really cool. So
It's good.
thanks everyone
Yeah, definitely.
thanks everyone for watching, and have a good night.